Hello, my friends. It's Nick, the ASMR nerd, and welcome to another episode of Relaxing Reviews. It's been a little while, and I'm happy to be back at it here with another mechanical keyboard review for you. Today, we're looking at a keyboard from a company called IQUNIX. IQUNIX is a Chinese manufacturer of premium mechanical keyboards, and actually I've looked at one of their products before. It was the F96 Joker, this right here. You might remember this if you've been around the channel for a while. You can see just from looking at this thing that it's pretty unique. It has a pretty standout aesthetic design, and that's kind of what I've got as a sense for what IQUNIX really has that sets them apart. They have these really strong aesthetic designs to their products. So today we're not looking at the Joker, but we are looking at an equally lovely looking keyboard. It's this one right here, the IQUNIX A80 Explorer keyboard. Now, while the Joker, the F96 Joker, had a 96% layout, the A80 Explorer has a more standard 65% layout. So it does away with the numpad, and it takes a few of the nav cluster keys and kind of squishes them up against the right side of the keyboard to make it more compact. But it also has that lovely aesthetic design and some other fairly bold design choices that you will see as we do the unboxing and the inspection. It's also got a whole bunch of other desirable features as well, like a hot-swappable PCB, like nice thick dye-sublimated PBT keycaps, and 3 different connectivity modes, including wired and 2 flavors of wireless, one being Bluetooth, the other being 2.4 gigahertz wireless, which is a much lower latency, higher performance wireless connection. So this keyboard has a lot of interesting stuff going for it. But as I said, for me, I think the most standout feature of IQUNIX's lineup is their striking aesthetic design. But you know what else has a striking aesthetic design? I bet you do. I bet you know what else does. Yeah, that's right. It's this t-shirt from this video's sponsor, Into the AM. Into the AM are purveyors of elevated everyday apparel, which is a fancy way of saying that they have really awesome looking clothes that are comfortable to wear and easy to care for, just like this shirt that you see me wearing right here. And then you might have seen me wearing this shirt in a previous video or even a Twitch stream or something like that. And that's because I think this is my very favorite design of all the t-shirts that Into the AM has sent over for me to take a look at so far. But they have all kinds of different designs, from these kind of bright and colorful ones with sort of naturalistic art like this, to ones that are more kind of modern and digital looking, to ones that are very psychedelic. There's a lot of spacey art. Some is colorful, some is monochrome, all kinds of different options. But all of their graphic t-shirt designs are exclusively licensed, which means you won't find these designs anywhere else. And I've been wearing these t-shirts a lot lately, and Into the AM has actually sponsored quite a few videos here on this channel now. I've heard from a number of you who've left comments letting me know that you picked up Into the AM clothing and apparel using that affiliate link down below in the video description, which saves you 10% on your purchase of graphic tees or joggers or hoodies or even underwear. They have all kinds of stuff over on their website. And all the feedback that I've received from you guys has been really positive. It seems like you're really excited and enjoying the shirts that you've been ordering from Into the AM, which is awesome because I have been too. And getting that positive feedback from you guys lets me know that you're appreciating these sponsorships, you're enjoying the product that these guys have, and it makes me happy to continue working with them, of course. So thank you all for purchasing with that affiliate link, which helps to support the channel, and thank you for giving me your feedback on the products that you've been receiving as well. It's great to know that everybody has been enjoying them. And if you would like to check out some exclusively licensed graphic designs on some awesome quality t-shirts, please do go click through on that link again at the top of the video description and pinned in the top little comment. It'll save you 10% on your purchase over at Into the AM, and that includes any of their individual items as well as their bundle, like their 3 t-shirts for $60 bundle, where you can select 3 of these graphic tees for $60. They also have a t-shirt of the month service, I guess you'd call it, which looks really interesting. They for $15 a month will send you an exclusive design that you will not be able to get anywhere else every single month. $15 for t-shirts of this quality, for the quality of the fit, which is awesome. It doesn't sit around and sag or anything. It's not baggy. It's nicely fitted. It's a little bit stretchy, very comfortable. Like I said, super easy to care for. And these graphics, they stay bright and colorful through multiple washes. This has been through the wash a bunch of times, not faded in the slightest. So $15 for a t-shirt like this every month with these awesome designs. Fantastic deal. So go check out their t-shirt of the month bundle as well. All right, so thank you so much to Into the AM for sponsoring this video, and thanks to all of you for checking out their stuff at the link down in the video description. All right, so with that said, talking about all these awesome graphic designs, it's time to take a look at the striking design of the IQUNIX A80 mechanical keyboard. This keyboard, just so you know, retails for nominally $190. That seems to be what it sits at. That's the only price I've ever actually seen it going for on IQUNIX's website. That said, the MSRP, like the normal price for the board, is evidently, I think, $285. I'm fairly certain, which is quite a bit more, significantly more. But I think what it is a situation where they say that that's the regular price and then they show a discounted price, but it's just permanently on sale to make you feel like you're getting a good deal. But I'm going to evaluate this at $190 because I think that is where it fits in best. Even at $190, it still is going head to head with some very formidable keyboards, like the Control keyboard from Drop, which you guys know I like an awful lot. That is getting well into premium territory at that price point, and there is a heck of a lot of strong competition. So, can the A80 stand up against all that competition? Can its aesthetics, or can its technical features and design match its sharp-looking aesthetics? That is what we're going to find out here today. IQUNIX was kind enough, of course, to send over this keyboard for us to look at. So we're going to unbox it. We're going to take a look at it, inspect it in detail, and I'll show you all the features and the functionality. Of course, we'll take it for a typing test. And at the end of this all, I will give you the pros and the cons of this board and my final verdict on it. There are, of course, chapter markers down below in the video description, also in the play bar there, so you can skip around and find the parts that you're most interested in. All right, with all that out of the way, let's take a closer look at the IQUNIX A80 Explorer. And here we have the IQUNIX A80 Explorer in box, and you can tell right off the bat this is it's marketed as such. You can also tell that IQUNIX has an eye for design and style. The graphic design of this box is very strong and it feels nice. We've got this lovely full color image of the board on the front here. The box itself is color matched to the colorway of the caps and the case. It's got this kind of aesthetic going on with these geometric sort of framing devices. I don't know. I just think it looks really nice, actually. But what I like the most, actually, is the finish of this box. It's very rough, very textured, and it makes it feel and look very premium. The cardboard used is very thick and rigid, and the box is packed tightly. You can hear it doesn't sound hollow or feel hollow. It feels really solid. So this box makes a really good first impression. And I should also point out that it was initially just wrapped in shrink wrap plastic. I just took that off to expedite the process here, but the plastic kept it very nice indeed in shipping. This was, of course, packed within a bigger box for shipping. On the top here, IQUNIX branding. Designed by IQUNIX. Made in China. We've got right on the end here. This is going to be hard for you to see. I'm going to just try and tip it so you can see it in the light there. Some information about the board. It comes in a backlit or non-backlit variety. We have the backlit RGB version here. Wired or wired and wireless. It doesn't actually specify, but we have the wired and wireless version. I think this board, the A80s, I think they only come in the multi-connection option. And this one is equipped with brown switches. Other options include blue, red, speed silvers, and pink, which I believe by that they mean Cherry MX silent reds, because they have a slightly pinkier hue than a typical Cherry MX red. So we've got Cherry MX browns here. Also available with Gateron switches, we have the Cherry version. Over on this end, this is A80 mechanical keyboard. Some Chinese here that I can't read. We obviously had some of that on the front as well. And on the back, that strong design aesthetic continues, and that really nice feel continues. Just the whole presentation of this feels premium. We'll see if that is borne out by the board. But anyway, we've got a render of the board here. The front and the back is shown. We've got the A stenciled in the background for the A80 series. Once again, A80 mechanical keyboard. I'm sure that must be what that says. Mechanical keyboard. The Explorer, so that's the name of this colorway. I've got a lot of Chinese specs listed over here, but we have them in English just below. So this box appears to be fairly well localized for both Chinese and English markets. We've got brand, product name, AVER80 mechanical keyboard. It's funny because it's branded the A80, but 83 keys. So they call this the A80, which on their website they imply that the branding is for an 80% mechanical keyboard. But an 80% mechanical keyboard is typically a 10 keyless board, which this is not. This is a bit more compact than that. It's actually closest to a 75% layout, although it's a slightly modified version of that as well, but that's really what I would call it. So it's an 83 keyboard, 75% coverage of a full size, but they called it the A80. ABS case, so no aluminum to be found here, somewhat disappointingly, but we'll see how it feels. PBT caps, that's nice premium plastic for the keycaps. Dye sublimation legends, so they will never wear off. CoStar stabilizers, so we've got some high quality stabilizers on here. I'm really keen to see or to feel how those stabilizers operate. USB Type-C connection if you're going wired. We've got almost 2 meters of cable, manufactured in Shenzhen. And over here, again, it says, you can probably see it right there, 80% layout. This is not an 80% layout, but mechanical switches, PBT keycaps, hot-swappable, very important, a very desirable feature these days. Great to see that they support it. USB Type-C, detachable cable, and key rollover, so you can press as many keys as you want at once without having to worry about them stopping registering. Fully programmable. Interesting. We're going to have to see about that because I looked on the IQUNIX website. I could not find software for this product, but they claim right here on the box that it's fully programmable, so maybe there'll be some information inside for how to download that. I was a little surprised because their F96 that I reviewed some time ago did have software, so I kind of expected there to be some for this. 3 adjustable feet and compatible with Mac OS, so unsure if it is compatible with mobile devices, Android and iOS. That we're going to have to find out on the inside because this is a Bluetooth capable keyboard, although funnily enough that is not listed here, but it does feature Bluetooth 5.0. So in theory, this could work with your mobile device as well, your iPad or your Android phone or tablet or whatever. Very nice feeling package, very nice presentation. You can see that texture there. Let me get it close. It's quite grainy. It's quite gritty. It almost feels like it's been spray painted, you know? It feels really good though. Okay, well, I think we have fawned over this package enough. Let's open it up and see what's inside, and hopefully it matches what we see on the outside here in terms of its presentation and quality. Alright, so on the inside, we're greeted with a very simple scene. We've got the board nestled in a matte plastic bag here. Very little in the way of padding. I'm actually a bit surprised because I seem to remember the F96 was packed in very nicely with lots of foam all around and on top. Not the case here. We've just got basically the thickness of the cardboard of the box. It's the only protection that's afforded the board inside. Now, I will remind you that this was shipped in a separate box, so with plastic packing and all that. So I guess maybe that's how they ship all of these. But no foam on the top or anything either. Black cardboard back here, which no doubt contains some accessories, but let's remove the keyboard first. that is weighty. That's a pretty heavy board considering it's all made of ABS plastic and well, PBT for the keycaps, but no aluminum in here, and yet it's got a lot of weight to it. Very solid. Pulling it out of the box. Part of that is no doubt due to the 4,000 milliamp hour battery. That's going to add a fair bit of weight and density to it. But there is this actually delightfully crinkly plastic. It's got a soft kind of feel to it, but underneath that there's also a dust shield. We'll look at that in a moment. Let's put that aside for a moment and see what else we've got in here. So again, very bare bones in here. No foam or anything. We've got a guide here. Please read this manual thoroughly. It's actually just kind of a fold-out piece of paper, it looks like. Oh, I see. Got a big reference on the back here. LED functions, or LED indicator. Oh, I see. There's an indicator in different colors that indicates what's going on. Caps lock, Bluetooth matching, reconnecting, 2.4 gigahertz mode. So this has both Bluetooth and 2.4 gigahertz wireless modes. Low battery, morning, charging, all that stuff. Function key combos, because again, this isn't a full-size board, so a little bit of functionality is going to be hidden on a secondary function layer. You can see that over here. Mode switching. And some other special key combos for pairing, basically for Bluetooth pairing. On the inside here, just some health warnings, product information, product specification. We've seen all this. Yes, it is compatible with Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android, and Linux. So that's great. Now, is there anything about software and programmability in here that I do not see? I do not see anything about either hardware macro recording or software reprogrammability, but it does say it on the box. So I think I'm going to have to reach out to the IQUNIX representative and find out about that. But what we do have here is warranty information. And it says right here, thank you IQUNIX for leaving it, or not leaving it up to interpretation. It just says straight up, IQUNIX offers a 1-year limited warranty. So that's great. A lot of keyboard manufacturers, especially these Chinese ones, don't provide very much information about warranties. But this is a higher end product. It's more expensive. One would expect there to be a bit more there. Support information, which is good. Fluid invasion precautions. A keyboard is an electronic device that contains a large number of circuits and capacitors. Please be careful not to allow water or liquids to enter. That's fair. And it also says do not disassemble or tear down. That will void your warranty. Fair enough, I suppose. Although that is, mechanical keyboards are meant to be tinkered with, opened up. Maybe you want to replace the stabilizers or something like that. So it's too bad that voids the warranty, but I suppose that's probably pretty typical. Let's see what we've got here. Just a little trap door. And we've got, what's this little, the cable. Very good. A double-ended keycap puller, switch puller. Very good. A very, very crumpled looking pair of IQUNIX decals or stickers, maybe. They got pretty mashed. That's too bad, but alternative keycaps for Macs, Command and Option caps for Macintosh OSs, and maybe this is the software. This is a USB stick, a little USB drive. No, it's not. It's a brush, you guys. It looked so much like a USB drive, but it's a brush. So that's not software. I thought that would be weird. Like, why would they not just include it if it's a download? Why would they include like a USB stick? But it's a very soft brush, I will say. Delightful. Okay, that's kind of cute. Okay, so let's just take a closer look at some of these other bits and pieces here. The keycap puller slash switch puller. Keycap on this end, it's a wire style. Switches on this end, it's a little grabby pulley style. Not branded, but feels relatively premium. Some nice little metal accents. It'll do its job, I'm sure. We'll find out. We'll try it out after. Yeah, those unfortunate stickers. Let's look at the cable here. Ah, yes, that's important too. So, we've got this beautifully color-matched cable that's gorgeous. It's got the sort of yellowy gold housing on either end, USB Type A on one end, Type C on the other, and then the sleeved cable is this beautiful teal question mark. I'm colorblind, you guys. This looks kind of tealish to me. It's an appealing color combo to my eyes, but maybe it's more of a blue or a green, or maybe it's just gray. To me, to my colorblind eyes in this light, it looks like a lovely teal. That's what I see. So you guys can feel free to correct me in the comments. I'll ask Sarah. She can tell me. I like the combo though. It looks very appealing. And it's nicely color matched, of course, to the board. But this is the 2.4 gigahertz receiver. It will not be necessary for Bluetooth. For that, you'll probably have to bring your own Bluetooth receiver, hopefully built into your device. But for 2.4 gigahertz connectivity, you will need this little guy right here. I do hope that there is a place to slot it into the keyboard for storage, for safe storage, because these little suckers are so easy to lose. If it's not, in your USB port, where do you put it? So I'm really hoping there's like a little slot or, spot for it on the board itself. Low profile, obviously, very small. That's good. And let's just take a quick peek at these keycaps here. So I believe these are cherry profile. They seem a little lower, a little shorter than your typical OEM profile. They looked like cherry profile to me. They are this dye sub PBT. The texture is relatively roughly textured. Not as rough as the skylight caps that come with like drops, Control or Alt or Shift. Those are very rough. This is a little less so, but it's still pretty roughly textured. But perhaps more importantly, nice and thick, very solid. No flex there, none. So that's great. And these are, as I mentioned, the extras for using if you are using it on a Mac. So let's put this aside for a moment and get to the board. And here we have the board itself, swaddled in plastic. Let's open that up. This plastic, not that anyone cares too much about the packaging, the bag, but this plastic is a little heavier than what you typically see. You can see it's got a bit of weight to it, and it feels nice. It continues that feel of premium presentation that we've had all the way through here. It's got a nice softness to it, and this lovely kind of low-pitched crinkle. That aside, the board itself is protected by this dust shield or dust cover, which is fitted, molded to the board. Comes off very nicely. And I don't know of anyone who really uses these after the fact. I mean, it's not like, I don't know, I would never go so far as to put this onto my keyboard every night after I'm done using it, but nonetheless, there it is. If you would like to do such a thing, you can. And there is the board. And it's quite the looker, isn't it? It's a very interesting design for a couple of reasons. Let's talk about it. So, first of all, the layout. This is, as I was describing, a roughly 75% layout. It is all fairly standard, at least in this bottom portion, right up to here, where our modifier keys, the bottom row here, are 1U, that's 1 unit width, rather than 1.25 U, or unit width, as they typically are. Over on the left here, we have the 1.5 U. On the right, we've got the 1 U. This is something you commonly see on a 65% layout. As a matter of fact, this portion from here, if we ignore the F row, the function row, this part is actually an identical layout to the Royal Kluge RK68 that I reviewed just a little while ago. And so this is a basic 65% layout, essentially. We've got those 1Us over here. We've got the dedicated arrow keys. We've got the shortened right shift. Then we've got an extra column over on the right here, which affords us the space for the dedicated right arrow key, and for end, home, page down, page up in this case. But then we have our function row. So this is what takes it from a 65% board. If we just had the bottom portion here, that's what we would have. This upper row brings it up to 75% board. But most 75% boards I've seen actually include a key right here. Whereas IQUNIX, pardon me, has opted to make that, I think, an indicator LED. I think that's what that is. We'll find out, I guess. So we're actually one key short of a typical 75% layout. But another thing you might notice is that this function row is really angled in, like really angled in. I'll show you the profile in a moment, but it is quite angled towards the user. And that's maybe one of the most striking design aspects of this board. We've also got this bold bar up at the top here. This bright kind of yellowy bar, which is not strictly necessary for anything. It doesn't really serve a function other than to look kind of cool. And we've got the sort of a dimpled look to it. Actually, oh, interesting. It's actually almost rubberized. You hear that? It's not a hard plastic. The body is a hard ABS, quite textured. This dimpled strip up at the top is kind of soft. Fascinating. IQUNIX branding on the right side here. You might be able to see that. And then what looks like it should be a button, but maddeningly is not. I was really hoping it would do something, but it doesn't do anything. It's just a little dimple, or a little, the opposite, whatever, a little bump. I guess it's just for aesthetics. I really wanted to do something, though. I thought it might be some kind of on-off button. Too bad. Anyway, and then of course we've got this lovely colorway with this, what I think my colorblind eyes see as gray for the modifiers, kind of a slate gray, white for the alphas, the alphanumerics, and then we've got some lovely accent keys here in this kind of goldenrod color. An interesting choice as well. Usually accent keys are like the escape will be accented, the enter will be accented, spacebar will be accented. Here we have the accented spacebar, and then all these extra keys over here, this extra column is accented as well. I think it looks great though. I think it looks really nice. Worth noting that in addition to our full function row up here, we've also got a print screen and a dedicated delete button as well. So that's great. No secondary functions on these keycaps. There may very well be secondary functions to these switches or to these buttons. In fact, I think the manual we looked at earlier said that there were. Like, there's no dedicated, what have we got? Home, end, page up, page down, delete. What are we missing? We're missing a scroll lock. We're missing something else. Something else from the nav cluster that's not coming to mind right now. Anyway, so there's going to have to be a few secondary functions under here on another layer. But okay, let's just take a cruise around this case. So it's got, as I was saying, this really, really uniquely angled F row here. I've never seen this before. but it's quite striking, and in theory should make those keys a little easier to press. In profile here, I think we do have cherry profile caps. They're slightly lower profile than OEM, I think. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think. We've got a fairly high profile case that does come up past the bottom of the keycaps here. So the keycaps are kind of slightly embedded into the case. We've got this sort of singular piece of this textured gray ABS, and then this sort of like terraced looking design, I think they call it, on their website, with these lines here, which I think actually looks pretty nice. That wraps around the back in the accent color, of course. These are USB Type-C connection right there. Nothing around that side, and nothing around the front either. But it's quite striking visually. There's that little IQUNIX logo. You can see that dimpling better from this angle. There's that weird little bump that doesn't appear to do anything. And what I think must be the LED indicator right there. It's hard for me to show you, but around the back we've got, this is kind of fun, it's a little sticker in the design of the board itself. On the back here, 80 layout keyboard, IQUNIX. The whole back is this golden accent color. Serial number of some kind, I guess. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 little anti-slip feet. IQUNIX A80, the model there. And we've got our flip-out feet, which also have anti-skid plastic on them. And true to their promise, we have 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layers. So you can have 3 different inclinations here. But no matter what you do, you are going to have some incline to this board because it's got some baked in there. Probably about maybe 5 or 6% on the main portion, and then something quite a bit steeper, maybe 15% or 10 to 15% up here on the F rows. And then you could go steeper still on the steepest. I'm curious if we bring out these big ones. Yeah, these are like really, really angled towards you at that point. Very interesting. Okay, so the last little feature on the back here is the wired versus wireless switch. So it's in wired mode right there. You can see a little pictograph and onto the wireless mode there. Now, I don't know how to toggle between 2.4 gigahertz and Bluetooth modes, but we will just have to figure that out. It's probably in the manual that we didn't look at. A few other things to look at here, though. First of all, let's take a peek at those keycaps. We already did that, kind of, but let's just take a look at these ones here. We're going to have to take them off anyway to get a look at those switches underneath. So here is another keycap. Die sublimated legend, so that basically means that the die is fused into the plastic, so it's not printed on the top, but it's rather dyed right into the plastic. They will never wear out. They are made of PBT, which is again sort of a considered a more premium material often, although there are also very high-end keycap sets made of ABS plastic as well. So, but largely it comes down to feel. PBT keycaps will not shine up nearly as easily with finger oils. They will maintain their sort of matte look and slightly rougher texture basically forever. And these caps are indeed very thick, which means that that should confer a really nice solid typing feel and sound, which is great. I just put that cap back on, but I shouldn't have done that because I want to look underneath that cap. So, recessed in here, you can see, hopefully, a Cherry MX RGB switch. So it's got the translucent upper housing. The plate underneath appears to be aluminum. You can see it just hiding back in there. So that's going to provide a fairly stiff, kind of rigid and sharp bottom out feel. As opposed to something like a polycarbonate or even a steel. It could be a steel plate, but it looks more like aluminum to me. This is a hot swap keyboard, so let's use the included switch puller to yank out this here Cherry switch. And come on now. Come now. There we go. I just hadn't quite got under the edge. So that came out pretty easily once I got it right. Cherry MX Browns. You can see the Cherry branding on there, maybe, hopefully. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. I guess it's upside down, but yeah, there you go. It's in there. Anyway, translucent bottom, transparent uppers, Cherry MX Brown memes abound. Yes, you know, many people think they're just such a boring switch, but I kind of like Cherry MX Browns. They might be like the default fence-sitting, generic, boring switch, but I don't hate them. Tactile with a little bump. That's a brown switch, of course. And the new Cherry switches, actually quite smooth. The retooled ones are actually pleasingly smooth. 3-pin, so plate mount. And overall, fairly unremarkable. But not too bad. Underneath, we can see a hot swap socket. 2 little sockets there to receive the pins. One for the peg, the stand in the middle. And then there's a little surface mount LED under there as well that you can see. Gorgeous sort of navy blue colored PCB underneath, actually very reminiscent of the one from the Royal Kludge RK68 in its coloration. Kind of interesting. I do think this is an aluminum plate. Has that feel to it. Okay, so you could swap those switches out for whatever your heart desires. And it looks like they pop in and out pretty easy. Lastly, stabilizers. Let's see. I have high hopes for these stabilizers. I really hope I'm not disappointed. Let's see what we've got. Okay, so as you can probably hear, these are not the greatest. The stabilizers themselves feel okay, but there's a lot of rattle. They're not that smooth. I don't think these are lubed. Very surprising, because I believe the F96 that I reviewed was lubricated from the factory, and a keyboard of this price point, I would absolutely expect it, but maybe they are, and it just doesn't feel like it. Let's take the caps off and find out. Let's take off the left shift here. This is actually a very stiff little keycap puller because it's actually a bit shorter than usual. So I'm just bend it out here, give it a little bit of flexibility so I can get it over there. Come now. Oh my goodness. It really doesn't want to come right. Of course. IQUNIX and their stabilizers. These are the same stabs that they used on the F96, which it said on the box. I forget their. Let me just take a look. Yes, the CoStar stabilizers. Okay, so I was wrong. These are lubed. You can see there's actually quite a bit of lubrication on there. It's pretty gooey if you look. I know the lighting's not the best, but you can see quite a bit in there. Nonetheless, they did not feel that smooth. And I feel like it's because the actual stabilizer bar itself is not stabilized or is not lubricated. I remember these. Okay, first of all, two things. These stabilizers felt really great on the F96. They don't feel so great here. Second of all, they are an absolute pain in the ass to work with when it comes to replacing keycaps, because as you can maybe see, the individual stems on here, they actually are just floating on their stabilizer bar. You can move them one way or the other, and they can slip right off the end of the stabilizer bar. And they're quite wiggly, and so putting a cap back on, you have to align them just perfectly, or else the cap won't go on. And that made swapping out the caps on the F96 a royal pain in the butt. So I'm going to try and get this shift key back on here, but no guarantees that I'll be able to do it right now. You can see they get askew so easily. Anyway, okay, so I was wrong. I was wrong. These are lubricated fairly adequately, but they don't feel nearly as smooth as they did on the F96, and I don't know why. Okay, let's see if we can get this on. If we can get it on first try, it'll be a miracle. Oh, amazing. Okay. So we aligned them just right there. I mean, they're not terrible. They're not awful. But like this one, that's quite rattly. The backspace is quite rattly. Well, anyway, we'll see how they sound in action when I'm actually typing, but they definitely have a bit more rattle, a bit less smoothness than I'd like. Maybe I've been spoiled by some other boards, like the Farmillo board has such beautiful stabilizers. Their stabilizer game is second to none. So the MA108M from Farmillo that I reviewed is, I think, the gold standard for factory stabilizers. But anyway, we'll see. I've got a little bit of audible pinging if you listen. It's probably the plate resonating underneath, but it's not too bad. But I also don't feel like there's much in the way of dampening here, if any. There would be much less ringing if there was dampening material in here. What I will say is that the way this case is shaped and this kind of these angled edges, it flares out towards the bottom, gives it a very large surface area on the bottom and confers a fantastic sense of solidity. It just sits so solidly against the surface of the desk. It feels really, really solid. And I think that's going to be really nice to type on. So, last thing that I like to do here before we move on is the flex test. This is plastic, ABS plastic, not aluminum, which is regrettable, but there is really no flex to speak of. It is a nice thick plastic, you can see around the edges, probably 3 millimeters or so. And it is very solidly constructed, so it doesn't sound creaky, it doesn't feel hollow, and it really doesn't flex. So that's good. Those are all good things. Okay. We've kind of given us the rundown. We've looked at it from every which way. Checked out sort of the physical features. Next up, we're going to take a look at the RGB backlighting, because despite not having shine-through caps, this board does feature full RGB backlighting. And we're going to take a look at the wireless functionality. So let's get on with that. And here we have the IQUNIX A80 Explorer plugged in and looking nicely illuminated. This is the default backlighting that appears when you plug it in for the first time. It's kind of this rainbow wave effect going on here. As you can see, and as we discussed, these are not shine-through keycaps, and yet a fair amount of light does come through between the caps, so it looks pretty good when fully illuminated. The keycaps are mostly opaque except for the yellow caps. You can actually see they have a bit of a glow to them when they're illuminated, which is an interesting effect. But the white caps and the dark colored modifiers are fully opaque to the backlight. So we'll start off by going over the backlight features here. Then I'll show you some of the other functionality and wireless connectivity, those kinds of things. But we'll start off with the pretty lights. So you can turn the lights on and off by holding down function and pressing delete. That's in the top right corner here. Lights off, lights on, lights off, lights on. We can adjust the speed of the backlight with function page up and page down. So this appears to be, oh no, pardon me, not the speed, the brightness. That's my mistake. I guess this is maximum brightness. Yeah, but we can bring it down in several steps. So we have off, 1, 2, 3, 4. Even at maximum brightness, it's not really that bright. It probably looks fairly bright to you right now because I have the ISO cranked up on my camera to show it off a little better, but in person, even at maximum brightness, the backlights are a bit dim, certainly compared to many other keyboards that I've looked at. And that's, again, probably partially due to the opaque keycaps, but even so, it's fairly dim by comparison. But it's bright enough, at least, to be visible and attractive. I think backlight speed is controlled with function up and down. So let's see if we can speed this up. Yeah, there we go. So that appears to be maximum speed there, and let's just turn it way down. So it just barely creeps along. Honestly, I quite like that. It's pretty zen, isn't it? I tend to keep my backlight effects on pretty low speed when I have the option. Oh, also worth noting, I don't see any flicker of the LEDs in real life. They look very smooth. The colors look nicely saturated. The gradients are nice and smooth. And there's no harsh flicker at all. You might see some in the camera. I always like to point that out. That's an artifact of the interaction between the shutter speed of the camera and the frequency of the LEDs, but it is not visible in person. Honestly, this actually has some of the smoother gradients of any keyboard I've tested recently, certainly anyway. They don't look harsh at all. So we have, I think, 7 different lighting modes. We hold down function, we press home. We get, Here, let's turn up the speed a little bit so that we can maybe see the effects a little better. Okay, so we get this one that cycles through colors. We get a breathing effect, which is also cycling through colors. If we wanted to make any of these effects a solid color, we do that by pressing down Function and pressing End. So now it's just breathing solid red. We also have a handful of other colors that we can cycle through. I'm not going to know when we get back to the rainbow because it's a breathing thing here. I'll have to wait for a couple cycles of light. I think we're actually back at the beginning there. I did not plan that very well, did I? Okay, now we're on white here, it looks like. Is this one cycling colors? Yeah, now we're cycling colors again. Okay, so moving right along, we have a reactive mode where as we press the keys, they light up. We've got, oh yeah, your exploding lights mode. We've got kind of a not even raindrops, shifting colors mode. I wonder if we change the color on this. Oh, we can't. This one's only available in rainbow. And then this is, okay, this appears to be solid color. Yes, it is. We can cycle through. And we're back to rainbow. And then our original cycling rainbow. So those are our color options. Not a lot. I think it is 7. That's what I read in the documentation. And about that many individual color options as well. Worth noting, no per key backlighting configuration on this board, regrettably. There doesn't appear to be a way to configure the backlights on a per key basis on board, like in hardware here, nor is there any software for this board. So in terms of the backlighting, what you've seen is what you get. There is no software configurability or per key backlighting available. So you better be happy with the default options. Also worth noting, though, that you can purchase this board without the backlight. So if what you see isn't appealing to you, you can just save $20 and skip the backlight entirely. Okay, let's talk about a few other functions. Under the function key and then the F row, you have your various Windows media functions. Evidently, they also work on Mac OS, play, pause, next track, volume up, down, all these kinds of good things. We have a reset option. If we hold down a function and hold down spacebar for 5 seconds, it'll reset the board to its factory defaults. We do have a few other toggleable options specifically for Mac users. I believe, function and maybe the Alt key, left Alt for 5 seconds, something like that. Here, let me consult the documentation just for you. Pardon me, I think it's function and hold down tab. Anyway, it'll swap Alt and the Windows key. And there's a couple of other key swap options like that for Mac users to make the layout match a little bit better. There's also a Windows lock function, which is pretty typical, which is just function Windows key. And I believe that's pretty much everything. Taking a look at the list here to make sure I haven't missed. Yeah, more or less. Oh, function print screen gets you insert because we have some of our nav cluster over here on the right, but we do not have an insert key. So function print screen works as an insert key. Okay, so we've got pretty good coverage. Basically, you've got everything you need, nothing you don't. So that's nice. Now let's talk about connectivity options here. So this is a triple mode keyboard in terms of connectivity, meaning we have the wired mode, which it is currently in right now with this here USB Type-C cable. But if we were to unplug that cable and then switch on the switch, which is on the back, you saw that during the unboxing. Let's just flip that switch. There we go. We are now in a wired or wireless mode of some kind. I'm not sure. It probably defaults to what I had it on previously, which was the 2.4 gigahertz receiver. So you swap between the wireless modes, which is Bluetooth, and the 2.4 gigahertz wireless by holding down function and pressing 1 for Bluetooth. So it is now connecting to Bluetooth or not. I did have this paired earlier. Wait, did I? I was actually experimenting with it, and I turned off Bluetooth to make sure that the 2.4 gigahertz mode was working properly. Let me just double check here. Oh, Bluetooth's off. That's why. There we go. Let's turn Bluetooth back on. Okay, so function 1. It thinks about it for about 3 seconds. And it grabs a connection. There we go. 5 seconds in that case. And the Bluetooth mode seems to work fine. There's always some latency associated with Bluetooth mode. It is not a high performance wireless connection. It's designed primarily for power savings, but I've used it a bit. It seems good. The latency doesn't feel noticeable to me. This uses Bluetooth 5.0, I believe. So, it connected quite easily. I did have to try pairing it twice. I think the first time, for whatever reason, it just didn't seem to grab it. It said try again, and I did, and it worked just fine. I've got this paired to my PC right now, but it will also pair with your Mac, your Android tablet, your iOS device, whatever. So it's pretty flexible that way by Bluetooth. You'll also probably notice the light turned off after maybe 10 seconds of inactivity, but as soon as you press a key, back on it comes again. So no issues there. To switch it to the 2.4 gigahertz wireless mode, you have to plug in your receiver to your device, your PC or your Mac, then hold down function and press 4. It thinks about it for a second and voila, it's connected. Quite quick, actually. I did have a little bit more of a challenge getting it to recognize the 2.4 gigahertz receiver. I think the trick is that when you pair it for the first time, to put it into pairing mode with the receiver, you have to press and hold function and hold the 4. You press and hold, press function, press 4 once to switch into the 2.4 gigahertz mode. Then you press and hold it for 5 seconds. Again, hold it for 5 seconds to put it into pairing mode with the receiver. Then it connects with the receiver, and then you're good to go. Every time you want to swap to it after that, you just press. I'm just switching back to Bluetooth here to show, but you just press function and 4, and then it switches back basically immediately. So that's not very well explained in the user guide, but that does appear to be the case. So that's the wireless functionality. And then to switch it back to wired mode, we just flip that switch and we plug it back in. And there we have it. Nice and easy. Worth noting, this indicator LED here, I haven't talked about it too much, but it does show various things. Caps lock is it's on solid like that when you have caps lock on. It'll also show you when you're in the wireless modes what your battery level is. This comes with a 4,000 milliamp hour battery, which is quite sizable. It's going to last you days and days, even with the backlight on, is my understanding. It's a fair bit larger than you typically see. But let's just switch it back quickly to a wireless mode here so I can show you how it indicates battery level. So we are in 2.4 gigahertz wireless mode. Very good. So if we go function B, watch the indicator LED. Flashes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that's telling us that it is fully charged. It flashes in 10% increments. So if it flashed, say, 3 times, that would mean it's at 30% capacity. It's a little bit of a quirky way to show you, but it gets the job done. One other thing I should mention about the wireless connectivity is with the Bluetooth option, there's only one Bluetooth slot as far as I can tell. The way these keys are spaced kind of makes you think that you should have Bluetooth under, function 1, 2, and 3, so that you get 3 separate Bluetooth devices you combined, and then 4 would be the wireless, the 2.4 gigahertz wireless. That's not the case though. Function 2 does nothing. Function 3 does nothing. So you can only be paired with one Bluetooth device at a time, which is kind of strange. I'm sure Bluetooth 5 supports more than that, and pretty much every other Bluetooth keyboard I've ever reviewed lets you do at least 3 devices memorized for pairing at once. But this only seems to do the single device. Maybe it's something to do with having to share the controller logic with the 2.4 gigahertz connection as well. I'm not sure, but it's a little bit of an unfortunate drawback. But personally, for me, I would rather have the 2.4 gigahertz option there because it's a much higher performance connection. It gives you millisecond or sub-millisecond latencies rather than the much more substantial latencies of Bluetooth. So if you want a high-performance wireless connection, that 2.4 gigahertz option is it. But of course, nothing can really beat a wired connection. So let's just bring it back one more time to our wired option here. The switch on the bottom is easy to access. And then plug this back in like so. Very good. And I'm not sure what the 3 flashes there like that is all about. Honestly, it seems to do that whenever you plug it into on wired mode. But anyway, doesn't matter too much. So that is the rundown of the backlighting situation, the general functionality on the secondary function layer, as well as all the wireless connectivity options. This would normally be the point at which I would show you the software, but as I mentioned, there is no software available for this keyboard. Bit of an odd choice given that they being IQUNIX, they did have software for their F96 keyboard, which I've reviewed previously, but they don't seem to have it available for the A80 series. Maybe it's for the best though, because oftentimes software for these boards is not the best, let's say. I am being a little facetious though. I would of course rather have the option for software, key remapping, and per key backlight configuration, even if it's kind of janky. I'd rather have it than not, but regrettably we do not have it here. So that means that the next step is the typing test. We're going to see and hear this keyboard in action. So let's get to it. Okay, so we've now had the chance to unbox and inspect the A80 Explorer in great detail. We've had a chance to check out the functionality in terms of the backlighting, in terms of the wireless connectivity, and you had a chance to see and hear it in action with a typing test. So I'm going to share now with you some of my thoughts and impressions about using this keyboard over quite a while now, actually. And I'll explain why I have kind of mixed feelings about this board. So the first thing is, of course, as we've talked about, aesthetically, I think this keyboard's really strong. I think it looks great. The keycaps have held up well. They haven't gotten shined up or anything over several months of use, actually. And the chassis still feels nice and sturdy. But despite that high quality construction, the typing sound kind of still leaves a bit to be desired, in my opinion. You guys would have heard it just now, and you might have noticed that it has a bit of a hollow, kind of pingy sound to it, like specifically with the resonance of that board, that plate, I should say. It's quite apparent, and it means that when you're typing on it, it feels pretty good, but you do get this kind of resonant aspect to the typing sound. So I don't think it sounds as good as it looks, is what I'm trying to say. And I think that IQUNIX could probably remedy this quite easily by putting a little bit of dampening foam in there, something along those lines. Or gasket mounting it, I guess, but you probably wouldn't even need to go that far. I think just a bit of dampening foam would go a long way. And so I didn't dislike typing on this board. In fact, I have enjoyed it overall, but it doesn't necessarily feel as premium as I would expect for a board at this price point, at least in terms of the typing sound. But the build quality is definitely up to snuff. But a more serious issue that I've had with this board, well, let me preface this by saying that the wireless experience with this board has been very good, aside from a couple of just initial issues with connectivity. I had to move the a wireless receiver for the 2.4 gigahertz mode from one USB port to another before it finally let me connect. I don't know why. It registered it, like my computer knew it was plugged in, but it just wasn't connecting in the initial port, so I'm not quite sure why. And then the Bluetooth, I had to try and connect it twice. It successfully connected on the second time. Since then, I've had no problems now that it's paired with both of those things. The signal has been solid in both modes. I haven't noticed any lag or latency in either mode, and the battery life has been exemplary. I just plug it in to charge at the end of the day. I've never had an issue with it in that regard. But weirdly, the wired mode I have encountered issues with. These have presented as intermittent dropout issues with connectivity. So I might be typing along or playing a game or something like that, and the board will just momentarily disconnect and then reconnect. This is when it is plugged in the wired USB-C mode. And those little brief disconnections, not such a problem. If I'm typing, what happens is whatever key I was pressing last just continues to press for like a second or two until it reconnects. So I'll just be typing along, and then it'll just be like, I don't know, press A, and it'll just be like, and then it'll reconnect and it'll stop, and it'll be fine. Those issues were cropping up, I'd say several times a day in normal usage. And then every once in a while, it would have a catastrophic disconnection where it just turned off. All the lights went off, everything turned off. No connection whatsoever. Again, this is in wired USB-C mode. And so the only way to get it to redetect would be to unplug it and plug it back in. Now, that's not a huge issue if you're just browsing the internet or whatever, but if you're in the middle of gaming, as I was on a couple of occasions, it might be enough to get you killed, which it was on a couple of occasions for me. So that's a problem. And I reached out to IQUNIX about this some months ago. And we had a back and a forth. I explained the issue. Eventually, they conceded that this might be a problem with their cable. That nicely color matched cable that you saw that came with this board. And so I thought that was a little odd. And I tried it with a few other USB cables. Same problem. Issue didn't go away. So eventually they said, okay, this keyboard needs a specific cable. They said you have to use our cable and we're going to send you a new one that should fix the problem. So several months down the line, here we are, and IQUNIX sent me this right here. This is pretty much the same cable that you saw before, except it now has a ferrite bead, this black thing right here. A ferrite bead, otherwise known as a ferrite choke sometimes. It filters out high-frequency electronic noise to deliver a cleaner, interference-free signal to the board. And so they claimed that after significant testing, they found that that was the culprit and that they had to add this ferrite bead to their cable. This is a common feature on a lot of keyboard cables, so that's not too surprising. Okay, sure. So I plugged in this cable to a different USB port than I had even tried before, and ran with it for a little while. And unfortunately, the problem persists. Now, I got this cable about a week ago, and I've been testing it since then. And I think in my completely unscientific evaluation, I would say that the occurrence of these disconnects is lessened. It has only happened a handful of times that I've got that brief disconnection, and only once where it completely disconnected in that time. And that was while I was away from the PC, so I just came back and it was disconnected. But it clearly has not resolved the issue. And that's unfortunate because that's a fairly significant issue if you plan to use it primarily in wired mode. The saving grace here is, of course, that the wireless modes, as far as I can tell, are not affected by this disconnect issue. I have not seen it in those modes, and they seem to work just great. So this is a funny reversal of the typical situation that you might expect, where often with wireless devices, the wired mode works fine. The wireless mode is a bit flaky. We have the opposite issue here. But if you are primarily intending to use it in wireless mode, then it's probably not such an issue. If you are using it in wired mode and plan to do a lot of high intensity or competitive gaming with it, this might be a big problem, even a deal breaker for you. And that is why I think it's so important that I let you know. Now, this could be a situation where this board is just a lemon. Maybe I just have a bad version of this keyboard. There's an issue internally somewhere with the PCB. I have no way of knowing because my sample size is 1. But through my interactions with the IQUNIX representative, I got the impression that maybe I wasn't the only person who had reported this issue, because again, he talked about how their engineers were doing testing and trying to find the root cause of the problem. So this suggests to me that other people have maybe reported this issue as well. So now, where do we go from here? I'm leaving this review as is. This is now part of the record. If IQUNIX reaches out to me again and wants to send me another version of this board, they think it's fixed or whatever, I will happily test it and happily provide an updated video for you guys, a little amendment to let you know. But as it stands, the fix that they sent me doesn't actually seem to fix the problem. So it's my job to let you guys know. So there you go. Overall, it hasn't ruined my experience with the keyboard, but I could definitely see it being a deal breaker for some people. So, okay, well, now that I've given you sort of my scattered thoughts and impressions and experiences using this board, let's break it down a little more systematically. I'm going to give you the pros and the cons, the things that I really liked about this board, and the things that I didn't like so much. We'll run those down in list form, and then we'll bring it all together into my final verdict on the IQUNIX A80. And you guys know me, I generally like to stay positive about these things. Let's start with the pros, the stuff that I liked about this keyboard. The first is that it looks great. I think this is a super sharp looking keyboard. I love the colorway choices, and I love this angled F-row up at the top there. I didn't think it would feel that different, but actually it does make those keys a little bit more easily accessible. You just don't have to move your fingers quite as far, and I think it provides this kind of unique aesthetic that does help set this board apart alongside this nice chunky base. I think that all that combines to make this board look really, really unique. And I really do like the aesthetic package that this board offers. I also think it's nice and solidly built. Now, it is made with plastic, which initially I kind of took issue with. At this price point, I would really prefer to see aluminum or some aluminum alloy, some kind of metals included in the construction. There's basically none of that with this board. It's all plastic, but the plastics are of very high quality. They're nice and thick. They feel good under the fingers, and the solidity of the chassis and the general build was never brought into question. I think it's generally quite well constructed. So the solidity of this board overall, despite being plastic, I think is one of the better selling points. Of course, the hot swap sockets are a really nice thing to see on any keyboard. Honestly, I think that any mechanical keyboard that aims to be for enthusiasts or that's kind of premium grade really ought to include hot swap sockets in this day and age. It just makes them so much more flexible, and the fact that the sockets on this one are of the variety that will accept any switch, not just Altimu switches with the thinner pins, but any of the thicker pin switches as well, is a real boon. So the hot swap compatibility is excellent to see. Also great to see die sub PBT keycaps, very high quality. The legends look really nice and sharp. They use a nice refined looking font and printing technique. There's no blurring or anything like that. And the lettering consistency, alignment, all that kind of stuff is really good. So the keycaps are definitely a highlight on this keyboard. And of course, the connectivity generally is a highlight of this keyboard. We've got triple mode connections. We've got the wired USB Type-C, which does have its issues, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But we've also got the Bluetooth and the 2.4 gigahertz wireless, both of which work really well. And so you have a lot of connectivity options with this keyboard. And finally, I gotta give this keyboard props for that big old 4,000 milliamp hour battery in there. It lasts a long time, and it's bigger than you see in most wireless keyboards, so that's definitely a selling point. Over here on the cons side of things, however, we do have some stuff to talk about. I'm going to start off with a very minor quibble, and that is that there's nowhere to stash the USB receiver for the 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection. The chassis on this board is sizable enough that they ought to have somewhere in here, whether it's on the bottom, that I can just snap it in, or up on the top where I can stick it in, somewhere for me to keep the wireless receiver together with the keyboard, because otherwise I'm liable to lose that thing. They're so small, and if you lose the receiver, then you're kind of out of luck, right? You have to have the correct receiver for the correct keyboard. So it'd be really nice to have somewhere to stash that thing on the physical keyboard. But that's a pretty minor detail. Ultimately, it's a small thing. Less insignificant is the fact that the Bluetooth connectivity mode only has one device that it remembers that it can connect to at a time, rather than having the typical 3 or sometimes even 5 that you see on devices like this. You've only got the one. So if you wanted to be Bluetooth connected to your PC or your laptop and your phone and just easily switch between them, for example, or your tablet or whatever, you're kind of out of luck, because again, you have to go and specifically pair it with each one each time. You can't just swap between them on the fly. Again, I don't know why that would be. Maybe they cheaped out on the Bluetooth chipset in here or something. Really not sure, but it's unfortunate, and it would really be nice to see them remedy that in future revisions of this board. Something else that would be really nice to see IQUNIX remedy in future revisions is the typing sound. Now, it's not awful, and I do think that the stabilized keys are pretty well done. The stabilizers are at least reasonably smooth, but there's a lot of resonance in the typing sound of this board. I think it's the plate resonating probably, and I think having a bit of dampening foam or a different mounting arrangement for the plate would go a long way to making this board feel more premium, because a big part of the premium feel of a board is actually the sound, but also the way it physically feels under the fingers when you press those buttons. And so I think if IQUNIX could just put some dampening material in to control the resonance a bit, that would go a long way to making this feel like a more premium typing experience. So these are all fairly minor complaints, but a major complaint that I do have is one that I already talked about at length earlier in the video. That is the occasional disconnection issues that I've been experiencing. Very briefly, just to recap, in the wired USB-C mode, so when it's plugged in, occasionally I get momentary dropouts where the keyboard loses the signal and then reconnects after about 2 seconds or something like that. I'd say those have been happening several times a day in sort of daily usage of this board. More infrequently, but more disastrously, I occasionally have complete disconnects where the keyboard disconnects from my PC and it does not reconnect or redetect it until I unplug it and plug it back in again. I must stress that this behavior is something I've never seen on any other keyboard. I tried a bunch of different USB ports. I tried a bunch of different USB cables, including this cable that IQUNIX sent me with the ferrite bead on it, which they believed would fix the issue. Unfortunately, it did not. So I can only conclude that this is a property of the keyboard. And I got the impression, as I said earlier, through my communication with the IQUNIX representative, that I probably wasn't the only person experiencing this, because they did acknowledge that it might require a solution that involved changing their cable that they're sending out with this keyboard. One would think if this was just a lemon that I got, and that this wasn't an issue that other people were running into, they would say, well, that's odd. We don't know what the issue is. No one else has reported this problem. Here, let us send you another keyboard. This one probably won't have the issue. But instead, they said that their engineers spent a long time testing, trying to suss out the problem, and they found that the cable was the culprit, or so they say. So that's why they sent me this new one. And yet, the problem persists. So this, as I mentioned earlier is potentially a deal breaker for a lot of people because if you're in the middle of an intense gaming session, let's say, especially if it's competitive, and suddenly your keyboard drops out and you have to unplug it and plug it back in, you're probably dead. That's not a very good experience, and that's not a very reliable piece of hardware. So if you are using it, however, in the wireless modes, either of them, I did not experience the dropout issue. Granted, I did use the keyboard less in wireless and more in wired, so it's possible that that issue still arises in the wireless modes, but I never saw it. Never happened to me. I think my guess is that it's specific to the wired mode when you have it plugged in. So it really depends on what your usage mode of this thing is, whether that's a deal breaker or not. But it's really important that I let you know that this is an issue I ran into. Okay, there's two more things in the cons here that I have to mention about this keyboard. One of them, there's no software. Now, granted, keyboard software for keyboards out of China primarily often tends to be pretty lacking in the user experience department. So maybe it's not a huge loss for some people, but without any software, there's no official support for key remapping or per key backlighting configuration. And maybe that's the biggest problem. You could use some other software to remap the keys if you wanted, but the backlighting, the LED color, you can only access if you have the manufacturer's proprietary software in this case to use it, or if it's QMK compatible or some other open source firmware compatible, which I don't believe the controller on this board is. So you're basically stuck with the onboard lighting effects and colors that you can pick just using the hardware solution. So if you're not getting the backlit version, maybe that's not an issue for you. But for the backlit version that I'm reviewing here, there's no way to do per key backlighting configuration or custom lighting configs because there is no software, and I do consider that a drawback. And finally, after all this, let's talk about price for a moment. This thing is ostensibly priced at $285 US. That is quite frankly absurd for this keyboard. That is way too much money for what you get here. There's much better options in that price range. Now, I've only ever actually seen this board on sale for $189. That seems to be the permanently discounted price that IQUNIX sells it at on their website. I can't speak to third-party sellers, but so it looks like maybe what they do is they set the MSRP quite high, and then they bring it, they put it on sale, and they just leave it like that all the time to make you feel like you're getting a good deal if you buy it on sale. But really, that $190 price point is what they intend to sell this board at. And that makes more sense to me, because like $285 is just right out of the ballpark for something that's made entirely of plastic and that has the feature set and quality of this board. At $190, it's still too much, honestly. That's still very expensive for this keyboard. And I think in that price range, there are, again, much other more compelling options. Something like the drop control would take over this keyboard, 9 times out of 10. That 1 time out of 10 being if I desperately needed all the wireless connectivity that this board offers, because the drop, of course, doesn't. But I think for most people, something like the drop is probably, or the control, is probably a better choice. I think that this keyboard would find a comfortable place around the $150, maybe down to $130 price point. There's nothing in here that makes me think that it is worth more than that. And there are certainly competitors in that sort of 130 to 150 price range that offer functionally similar experiences. So I think even at the so-called discounted $190 price point, I think that they're just asking too much for what they're offering here. So what then is my final verdict on the IQUNIX A80 Explorer keyboard? Well, I think it's a really sharp looking keyboard. I think it looks fantastic. And generally speaking, I think it's well made. The chassis is all plastic, but high quality plastics, nice and solid. The keycaps are of high quality. Overall, it feels like a fairly good quality keyboard, and it does pack in quite a few desirable features, like the hot swap sockets, like the RGB backlighting. If you opt for that version, you can opt to not have the backlighting for $20 less. That brings the price down $20. And all the wireless connectivity is maybe the other big selling point for the A80 here. But despite the solid build quality, the typing experience is a bit lacking. It doesn't feel as premium as I would like it to at its price point, largely due to a lot of resonance in the board. I think the plate is resonating quite a bit, and it produces this kind of ringy typing feel that just isn't as solid and dampened as I would like. So hopefully that's something IQUNIX can consider resolving in future revisions. But more to the point, I ran into some issues with this board, specifically with the wired mode connectivity when it's plugged in via the USB-C connection, with occasional connection dropouts where either it would drop out for a couple seconds and then reconnect, or it would just completely disconnect and I'd have to unplug it and plug it back in again. This is a serious issue and a potential deal breaker for a lot of buyers. The other potential deal breaker here is the price point of this keyboard. It does pack in, as I said, quite a few desirable features, but the $190 price point that this sits at is simply too much for what's on offer here. I would really hope for some metal to be included, some aluminum in the case design at that price point, and that would, I think, also help add that sense of stability and solidity that would make the typing experience feel a little bit more premium. And I just think there are better options, generally speaking, at this price point, such as the drop control, but there's a lot of options, honestly. It is a very, very crowded market these days, and IQUNIX really has to up their game by either reducing the price of this thing or by increasing the material quality or the features on offer to be truly competitive at this price point. Now, all that being said, as I started off saying here, I do think it's a hella nice looking keyboard. It's got some unique design features that do make it somewhat special looking. And if you have fallen in love with the aesthetics of this board, and I can't blame you if you did, and you plan to use it primarily in wireless mode so as to avoid that wired intermittent disconnect issue, and you don't need to switch between multiple Bluetooth devices on the fly because it only supports one memorized device at a time. If all of those things apply to you, then this might be the board for you. It's not a terrible keyboard. It's just not a great keyboard at the price it needs to be at. And it has that one intermittent disconnect issue, which, again, I'll continue to communicate with IQUNIX about it. And if a solution is found, I will provide an update and let you guys know that. But as it stands, generally speaking, I have a hard time recommending the IQUNIX A80 Explorer for the reasons that I've described here. It's a beautiful keyboard, but it's got some issues. So that is my final verdict. And that brings us to the end of another relaxing review I do hope that you enjoyed this video. Special thanks to IQUNIX for sending over the A80 that I looked at here in this review, and for working with me to try and find a solution to the disconnect issues. I wish we had managed to find one, but as of the time of this review, we weren't able to. And of course, special thanks to this video's sponsor, Into the AM, they of the awesome t-shirts. Please go check out the link down in the video description if you like what you see me wearing here and you want to check out some more of these awesome exclusively licensed graphic designs on these very comfortable and easy to care for t-shirts. Any purchases you make through that link will come back to support the channel, a portion of your purchase, and you will save 10%, which is rad. It's a mutually beneficial situation, so please go check them out. And thank you again for Into the AM for supporting and sponsoring this video. And of course, there's a link down there as well to the IQUNIX A80 if you want to check that out as well. Maybe it's got just the features and the aesthetics you want. Maybe it's for you, but I do encourage you to make sure that you consider it before you consider pulling that trigger on the purchase. All right, thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. I hope you found this informative. I hope you found it relaxing, and I look forward to having you back here next time for another episode of Relaxing Reviews. Bye for now, my friends.